Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to the second stream of book one of Copper Coins, which I'm super excited about because now we have our characters introduced, so we can actually get into the meat of the story. But anyway, this is a chill stream, and what that means is that I will be talking to myself, I'll be talking to the book, and I will be talking to I always gesture the wrong way, but my lovely book garden in the chat. This may not be your flavor of reading, but maybe stick around, you might enjoy it, you never know. If not, no hard feelings. I know it's not for everyone. Hello, Chi Chi Kiki. How are you doing today on this absolutely beautiful Thursday? I know I'm doing really good. I've got a surprise, kind of surprise. I think I've mentioned it to share in just a little bit. But this is also a mature stream, so there will be mature topics being talked about. I'm glad you're doing good, Chi Chi Kiki. And hello, Annika. How are you doing? So, there may also be some triggering things, less so in this book than the one we just finished. It's a little more tame. My glasses are very shiny today, so I'm going to be looking down, kind of like I look like I'm reading. But there may be some serious topics that we are discussing, well, are reading. So just be aware. For those who watch later, if there are certain things that I believe will be triggering, it will be in the title, there will be a short description in the description, and there will also be a timestamp of when that occurs. However, if you are with me during the live, it's live. There's only so much I can do. As I said, this one's not so bad. There are parts that get kind of creepy, but yeah, and I totally get it, Annika. So ready for the weekend. But yeah, just be aware if things start getting dicey and you think there's something that may trigger you. Totally okay to just wait until it comes out and there's either a timestamp or not. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your mental health. Do what you got to do. It's all good. I just want you to be safe and have a good time here. This will be my first free weekend in over a month, and I am ready to chill. Very nice, Annika. Well, I hope you have a good weekend. I am not sponsored. I don't make anything from this. I doubt I will, or I will anytime soon, if at all. But the only thing I own is the physical copy in front of it myself and my time, and sometimes not even that. But, I do this just because I can and to get this Danmei out there so that more people can enjoy it and these stories. I like doing this. It's a lot of fun for me to read and explore these books with all of you. Um, that being said, I am not fluent, and I will stumble over some most likely names or places and the occasional word. I might look up something if I just want to clarify, or if I just don't know what it is, potentially look up how something looks if it's a new word for me. Just so we all have a idea in our heads then of what it looks like. Thank you, Annika. This is I know it's a lot more curly than usual. Usually I grab a shower before this, but I was feeling super cute today, so we just went with it. But yeah, thank you very much. That's it. So, I said before that I had something super cool to share with you. So there's partially the reason why I look so nice today. I got another tattoo. Let's see if I can focus it. Focus on the arm, not my face. Focus on the arm. I got the brush buddy. It's this is there. I will post a better picture in the community page. But let me see. I make this work with there we go. He's super cute. Ta-da! Thank you. No, he's a little goober and I love him. Yeah. That was a whole bunch of weird flailing. So I'm glad we finally actually got it to focus. But no, I went and got that done this morning and it's the same artist that did my other ones and she and I both had a super fun time doing it and it's a little bloody cuz it's a tender area and it's in Sanoderm just to keep it safe. But yeah, no, it's my whimsy tattoo that I got just because. Well, because I like it and also um for pride. Um but yes, cuz I realized that I surprisingly don't yet have a pride tattoo even though I am some form of gay. Uh what that looks like, who knows, but I'm me and that's enough. But let's just go ahead and get into it. I don't really have anything else to add. I had a great day today and I am ready to start. Literally me. You are right? Why do we need labels? Oh yeah. Let's start. $7.15. All right. So, hello, Truffle. We were just chatting, but thank you. Yeah. So what they're talking about is I went and got a new tattoo today. So it's a little brush buddy with a rainbow heart. It will be a little clearer earlier in the video, but it's also my pride tattoo. So, but yeah. I am very excited about this shirt. You will be seeing a lot of this shirt this summer because it's so comfy and it's super cute. So you'll be seeing this shirt a lot. I'll change it to 8. I mean, it could be, but it's from an anime called Witch Hat Atelier. But he's a sweetie. It could be, but it's not. All good. Okay. So recap. How are you doing, Truffle, by the way? You need to cross over with Brush Buddy Shylian. Yeah, propose that in the Kickter chat, maybe this Friday. Someone will definitely write that, especially if we do frantic fanfic. Okay, so last time we went in to Scribe Liu's house and they were talking about how the feng shui is messed up and how either Scribe Liu hired a hack to design the layout or he added this path himself later. Sure enough, Scribe Liu's expression grew strained hearing Xuan Min's assessment. To be honest, this path was added afterward. I'd have to do battle with the forces of Waterleaf tomorrow. So Hellfest started. Very cool. I wish you victory against the forces of Waterleaf. Or either with or against. I wish you luck in your battle. But yeah. Ooh, what book, Truffle? You'll have to say. But, um, Scribe Liu was becoming flustered because we met his oldest son, Liu Chong's, Liu Chong, who, as the book puts it, is a bit simple. Like, he's innocent and a bit childish, but, like, his face should have seemed spirited and quite charming when he smiled, but due to the naivete in his expression, it had a foolish tinge instead. Liu Chong evidently suffered from a mental disability. It's an evil, evil plant. It's called Ishidification by Cory Doctorow. Hmm, interesting. That does sound interesting. But yes, till this point, Xuan Min had remained indifferent to Scribe Liu's alternating briskness and bonhomie. Faced with this smiling fool, Xuan Min seemed to grasp the concept of courtesy, and he nodded at Liu Chong. Though his demeanor still lacked warmth, it was at least counted as a response. Very cool! Scribe Liu flushed a little purple. To Xuan Min, he, a county scribe, was below a fool. So he's butthurt that Xuan Min, the monk, the Taoist monk, actually was treating his like young disabled son with more courtesy than he was treating like, oh, I'm the big county scribe. But then they start heading toward Liu Chong's house, which is in a courtyard. So, as the sky brightened further, the rest of the courtyard seemed to sharpen, the contours growing clear as if washed with water. Only this little shack remained a murky mass in the dark. Like Shu Xian, Xuan Min had also noticed the unusual level of yin energy in the area. Without another glance at Scribe Liu, he strode toward the little shack. Liu Chong scratched his head, apparently confused as to why the guest was heading to his house. For a long moment, he stood there, bewildered. Then his eyes brightened like he'd spotted a new playmate, and he stumbled forward, using the wall for support as he chased after Xuan Min. Despite being in his 20s, Liu Chong remained childish, and his gait was unsteady. While trying to stay shoulder to shoulder with Xuan Min, he sometimes stumbled too far ahead or fell behind. But the whole time, his eyes stayed firmly fixed on Xuan Min's waist as if he'd spotted something fun and exciting. Not once did he look away. Liu Chong was focused on the opening of the hidden pouch where Shu Xian lay. Shu Xian felt himself bristle at Liu Chong's stare. Unfortunately, Shu Xian hadn't retreated in time, and now he couldn't even if he wanted to. Like he could move while this fool was staring at him. Be one thing if he made Liu Chong cry, but what if he got worked up and did something rash? If that happened, Shu Xian would really be in trouble. Okay, so that is where we left off last time, and I will also read off the counts. So our current counts for things we are looking out for is our donkey count, which is standing at a rather remarkable 5, considering we've only read 3 chapters. Our Jiang Xining abuse is also sitting at a rather high 4. Our wanted poster count is sitting at 3, and our face count, specifically for Xuan Min, where people comment on his face, is sitting at 3. So for the face count and the wanted poster, I'm going to ask for help with those because I'm not 100% sure how to count them. So, especially you, Truffle, I'm looking at you. Just remind me if I go past something. If I miss it, just add. This could be for any of them. Just remind me to add a tally. But yes. Chapter 4. Let me mark down the time, 14:45. Chapter 4, Gold Ingots. The shack wasn't far. Xuan Min was tall, his legs long. A short moment later, he was standing at its entrance. Oh, thank you. My niece actually did them. She's staying for a couple weeks. So she got very creative with my nails. Oh, did I lose it? Nope, it's still there. But thank you. Yes. The shack wasn't far. Xuan Min was tall, his legs long. A short moment later, he was standing at its entrance. From Shu Xian's vantage point, he could glimpse through the half-open door. What he saw inside shocked him. Thank you. Piled next to the door was a heap of yellowish objects. At first glance, they looked like gold ingots, but on closer inspection, he realized that they'd been folded from paper. These were paper ingots, folded from yellow wax paper and meant to be burned as offerings for the dead. Thank you. I will definitely let her know you guys like my nails. While Shu Xian was busy being surprised, Liu Chong, who was right behind Xuan Min, piped up. Can I play with that? He was pointing at Xuan Min's side. Xuan Min looked down at his hip, unsure what Liu Chong was referring to. Yellow paper, Liu Chong pointed again. Now Xuan Min understood. He was pointing to the paper doll at the pouch's opening. Shu Xian was speechless. The hell? This guy sure has some guts. Daring to treat a dragon like a toy? Does he have a death wish? What would a fool know? One wrong move, and the young man would rip him right in half. A bit of carelessness, and Shu Xian might find himself in 8 pieces. An indescribable pain coursed through him at the thought. Throwing caution to the wind, Shu Xian scuttled back inside the pouch and pinched Xuan Min hard through the white hemp. If you dare hand me over, I'll make you pay, Shu Xian thought. Xuan Min said nothing but wondered. Why is this evil spirit so unruly? Worried that Xuan Min was too stupid to understand what the pinch meant, Shu Xian took the chance to flip himself over the moment Liu Chong averted his gaze so that the doll's painted face was facing up. From that position, Shu Xian glared up at Xuan Min with his ink-dot eyes. However, a painting could never compare to a real face. Moreover, Shu Xian's artistic skills were passable at best, and certainly not a master's. His ink eyes lacked the spirit of real ones. Perturbed by the pinch, Xuan Min looked down at Shu Xian coldly, ready to issue the troublemaking spirit a warning, only to meet those painted eyes peering out of the pouch. He started, genuinely caught off guard. Belly up, with a pair of deadened black eyes, the paper doll was the very picture of a wide-eyed corpse. Xuan Min had captured his fair share of demons and ghosts on his travels. Most of them had been defiant before being subdued, then respectful and fearful afterward until they were put to rest. Few were like Shu Xian, who refused to settle down even after being captured, and no other had been this brazen, tirelessly causing problem after problem. It was almost dramatic in its behavior. It could possibly put on an entire play by itself. As Xuan Min thought this, his eyes flitted briefly over the paper doll, then he reached in with 2 fingers and plucked it out of the pouch again. You'll pay for this, Shu Xian screamed internally. Xuan Min's fingers were unlike those of people who'd lived through the regular bustle of daily life. They were pencil straight, slender, and spotless, as if they'd never been dirtied. He didn't seem like someone who'd grown up in a temple, and he certainly didn't resemble a wandering monk. Rather, he was more like a pampered nobleman. At this moment, Shu Xian didn't have the luxury to notice these things. Between 2 fingers, Xuan Min held out the doll, bringing it a little closer to Liu Chong. In the future, I'll unleash all my lightning on you, Every day around the clock, Xu Xian thought. This? Xuanmin asked Liu Chang. I swear I'll fry you to a crisp, or I'll change my name to Four-Legged Worm. Hmm. No, not that noise. Liu Chang nodded vigorously, then smiled that foolish grin again. The hell are you smiling about? Just as Liu Chang was reaching out to take the paper doll, Xuan Min shook his head. You can't, he said, his expression as placid as ever. Guess you have some sense after all. Xuanmin calmed down after all his mental shrieking and sighed in relief. The paper doll, originally taut in Xuanmin's grip, suddenly sagged, draping limp and soft as if it had gone from half paralyzed to fully paralyzed. Liu Chang looked seriously at Xuanmin and nodded again, but his expression was crestfallen. So he was disappointed. He knew nothing of people or the world, so he also knew nothing about tact or disguising his feelings. His disappointment was written all over his face. Persons with disabilities tended to move slower and less nimbly than the average. At the same time, they put great strength and effort into every action, whether it was staring, articulating speech, or even nodding or shaking their heads. The resulting image might have been clumsy, but it tugged on the heartstrings. Xu Xian hung between Xuanmin's fingers like a limp noodle as he glanced at Liu Chang before firmly looking away. He feared the young man was a poison, one that would make others as stupid as he was. If Xu Xian observed Liu Chang any longer, he might lose his mind and jump right into the fool's hand himself. Now that would be something. I find it interesting how he's almost got a tsundere like tone to his voice and actions, where he's trying to be big bad fierce guy, but that was a little soft right there. Where he's like, if I keep looking at this guy, I'm going to give in and be like, fine, you can play with the paper doll. Don't look at me like that. Just a little bit. However, even more surprising was how Xuanmin acted with greater frankness than Liu Chang. The former completely ignored the latter's disappointed expression. Instead, Xuanmin brazenly stepped forward into the shack. Though before that, he recalled the concept of courtesy and shame and nodded at Liu Chang. Would it kill you to say one more word? If Liu Chang can understand what your nod means, I'll change my family name to yours, Xu Xian thought. Before Xu Xian could scoff, Liu Chang made it inside his little house first. He happily waved at Xuanmin and said, Come in! Exactly like a child who'd found a playmate. Xu Xian grimaced. I might as well just keep quiet and dangle here, he thought. After flailing around for so long, he had no choice but to settle. Right? And he justifies it to himself because, well, anyone would be swayed by him. Yeah. Liu Chang pulled the half-open door wide open, revealing its interior in all its glory. The yellow paper ingots were everywhere, in far greater numbers than Xu Xian had glimpsed before. They weren't just behind the door. Glancing around revealed that there was barely anywhere to stand. Careful what you say, Xu Xian. That's not ominous at all, Truffle. Seeing the state of his eldest living space, Scribe Liu turned his face away, his expression full of displeasure. He showed no intention of stepping inside and waited a few feet away from the door with his hands behind his back. Yep, he's becoming even more of an ugh, this guy. At least not as bad as Thousand Autumns, but still an ugh, this guy. He was probably in turmoil right now. He wanted Xuanmin to help fix the feng shui of his residence, but he also wanted to drive the rude and tactless monk out. Anyone capable of reading the atmosphere would have reined in their behavior to further avoid offending their host. Unfortunately, Xuanmin didn't care about that. Not only that, he didn't even look at him. Scribe Liu could barely restrain his anger. Liu Chang's space was simply furnished, completely unlike what one would expect from a young master of the county scribe's residence. Saying it looked like servants' quarters would be no exaggeration. There was only a square table and two wooden chairs, as well as a bed that was too small for Liu Chang. See, I have issues with that because it's like, all right, you already put him in a shack. You gave him very little furnishing. At least give him a bed that's big enough. Like, do him that courtesy. Like that's a simple like life comfort. Like, give him a bed that's long enough. Um In the already tiny building, someone had even erected a pretentious partition to create an outer and inner chamber. It divided the bed from the table and chairs, adding to the cramped atmosphere. Everything there looked worn and aged, like they'd been used for years. The only splash of color came from the yellow ingots heaped everywhere. I'm just amused that Shu Xian wants to end Xuanmin's whole career, and probably will. And yeah, it's giving covered under the stairs. It definitely is giving covered under the stairs. Xuanmin picked one up and inspected it closely, turning it this way and that. From the tips of the fingers on Xuanmin's other hand, Shu Xian had a lower vantage point. Since he was also facing up, the underside of the ingot was visible to him. Written there were 3 characters: Father, Dusk, Dusk. Yeah, the poor kid's definitely not the favorite. Oh, hello, Ruby Bonico. Ruby Bonico. Hello. How are you today? What kind of stupid nonsense is this? Only after some mental cursing did Shushan realize it wasn't 3 separate characters, but one. Dad. In Liu Chang's clumsy and juvenile handwriting, the strokes of the character were too spaced out. We only just got started, Ruby. So we summarized for a bit, and we're just kind of describing the inside of Liu Chang's house and what they're seeing. So you have not missed anything. And of course, I'm glad you're doing good. Having seen the ingot, Shu Xian understood Scribe Liu's displeasure toward his son. Putting a living person's name on this kind of ingot was no different from cursing them. However, one look at Liu Chang's guileless face would tell you that he was merely playing. Shu Xian soon swallowed that thought because Xuanmin continued to pick up the ingots, and each one had writing on the bottom with childish strokes. Trapped and bored, Shu Xian counted 7 ingots in total. 2 with father, dusk, dusk, dad, and 3 with woman, good, mom. 2 more were completely blank. What kind of bizarre hobby was this? Still, as simple as Liu Chang was, he knew how to categorize things. The pile next to the door all had father, dusk, dusk written on them. Liu Chang had written these for his father, Scribe Liu. The heap by the table was for his mother. As for the ones scattered on the ground, he had yet to write on them. Then, what about the pile next to the bed? Shu Xian wasn't the only person who noticed this. After briefly examining the ingots outside the partition, Xuan Min stepped into the so-called inner chamber where the bed was located. Shu Xian has trust issues. Yes. The moment he did, a gust of yin wind blew into Shu Xian's face, and he sneezed. Achoo! Liu Chang was baffled. He stared at the expressionless Xuan Min for a while before looking at his hand. Liu Chong seemed unable to understand how his fingers could have sneezed. That's that's kind of sweet. Like, he looked down at his hand like, "Can you do that?" However, neither Xuanmin nor Shushian paid any attention to this. They were busy being stunned by the thick smog of yin energy in the room, and their gazes fell simultaneously onto the pile of paper ingots by the bed. With a furrowed brow, Xuanmin walked over. He picked up one of the ingots. This time, the bottom said neither Dad nor Mom. Instead, there was a large smudge of ink. It seemed he'd written something more complex than before, resulting in a smeared mess. Picking up two more, Xuan Min found them the same. Right? Innocently sweet. After staring at their undersides for a while, he managed to mostly make out the character. Liu. He knew little about the Liu family, so his mind went right to scribe Liu and his two sons after seeing it. However, judging from the smeared blot, the original writing didn't say Liu Shu, nor did it say Liu Chong or Liu Jin. Just as he bent down to pick up another, something rolled out of the pouch at his waist. That something uttered, "Ouch!" as it tumbled right onto the heap of paper ingots. When it hit the ground, it suddenly inflated like a balloon and transformed into a whole person. The person's skin was deathly pale, with dark circles beneath his eyes, the picture of a weary scholar. It was none other than Jiang Xining. He, too, had never expected to suddenly transform from a paper doll to a person. Huh? How did I fall out? He asked, bewildered. To Shushian's surprise, Liu Chong wasn't at all frightened by this extreme transformation, so he dropped his paper doll act. There's too much yin energy here, Shushian explained. Ghosts loved yin energy after all. That was why Jiang Xining was immobile during the day when yang energy was plentiful. By contrast, Liu Chong's room contained more yin energy than a cemetery, so that helped Jiang Xining. Somehow, despite the oppressive yin energy, Liu Chong was alive and well. That was strange. Jiang Xining was still puzzled. Why don't you also fall out of the pouch? He asked Shushian. Well, I'm not dead yet, Shushian said irritably. I'm not like you. And why are you clinging to a paper figure if you're not dead? Jiang Xining thought that there had to be something very odd about this Shu fellow. If he wasn't a ghost, then he still had a body, but if he still had a body, why not leave it to live his days as a paper doll? Oh, why leave it to live his days as a paper doll? Why do that unless there was something wrong with him? Ouch. What's it to you? Shushian drawled from his position between Xuanmin's fingers. If you have time to talk, spend it getting to your feet instead. After all, Jiang Xining had transformed into a whole person. He might have been sickly and thin as a reed, but he still had mass. The paper ingots couldn't bear his weight. They had been mostly squashed, his tumble pancaking the small golden mountain into flat land. Oof. Looking around, Jiang Xining realized what he was sitting on and quickly cupped his hands, bowing to Liu Chong in apology. Sorry. Liu Chong had been frozen next to him, but now returned to his senses. Ah! He cried. He unceremoniously shoved Jiang Xining aside and knelt on the ground, carefully trying to push the squashed paper ingots back into shape. Aw, poor baby. Alright, I don't know if I'd mark that as Jiang Xining abuse, but like, I might not say Jiang Xining abuse. Jiang Xining travesty. Maybe. I'm gonna put a tentative one right there just because the hijinks. It wasn't malicious. but just like poor Jiang Xining. All right, ma suffering. There we go, suffering. Thank you. Jiang Xining suffering. Liu Chong's strength was far above average, so Jiang Xining was sent tumbling, his frail body unable to withstand that force. He crashed into the nearby wooden cabinet, shoving it back a few inches until it slammed into the wall with a thud. Fate's favorite chew toy. Yep. Jiang Xining fell into a heap before awkwardly propping himself up, wanting to help Liu Chong fold paper ingots as an apology. But as he braced himself to stand, he gasped in pain and yanked his hand away. A hole had opened in his palm, and though there was no blood, the pain pulled his face into a grimace. Paper bodies could allow drifting souls to become substantial, enabling them to walk, stand, and touch things, bringing their existence closer to that of a living person. However, this meant that they were more vulnerable to injury. So that's going to be another one for Jiang Xining. So he's at 6. Why are there nails in the floor beneath the cabinet? Jiang Xining complained before he turned to whisper to Shushan. Next time, if there's still a next time, could you use leather instead of paper? Why not just use human skin? Said Shushan thoughtlessly. Jiang Xining gasped at him. Gaped. He gaped at him. Different. Sorry. Xuanmin's expression stayed placid, but his fingers slid over to press down on Shushan's mouth, lest this troublesome thing continue spewing nonsense. As Jiang Xining got up, he caught a glimpse of the patch of floor where he'd punctured his hand and discovered something. Hmm? How strange. There's a piece of paper attached to the nail. It is one of his misfortunes. Hearing this, Xuanmin frowned, gathered up his robe, and squatted down. The cabinet had been pushed aside, revealing a small patch of ground where something sharp and pointy jutted up. Xuanmin tore off a corner of his robe and used the white hemp to rub at it. As the mud was wiped off, the sharp object could be identified. A copper nail with 3 ridges running along its body. Since it was caked with mud, the nail had been here for at least 2 or 3 years, yet it still gleamed. It was no ordinary object. More importantly, it was nailed to a piece of paper with its surface obscured by dust. Xuanmin frowned and studied it as he wiped the thick layer of grime away. Sure enough, it was a piece of yellow paper on which intricate diagrams were drawn in red cinnabar. He didn't need to understand the contents to know what it was. All right, I'm going to show it, and then we'll... Oh, Jiang Xining, you sweet, delicate flower. To be fair, Xuanmin, like, eyeliner on fleek, like, eyebrows on point, like, he is killing it. Like, Jiang Xining looks like he needs a hot cup of tea, a soft blanket, and a nap. I love it. Down here, look. He's like, "Vrr, vrr, vrr, vrr." It's funny. He does kind of look like he's biting down on him. But dude just took a nail through the hand. Ow. Especially a copper nail. He's a spirit. Poor Jiang Xining. Yeah. All right. Jiang Xining was stunned at first, but then he pushed the cabinet further to the side, exposing even more of the ground. The cabinet had been concealing 3 copper nails, each pinning a yellow talisman to the ground. One pointed southwest, another northeast, and the last northwest. What kind of talismans are these? For longevity and health? Jiang Xining asked. He stared at the yellow paper for a while. Inexplicably, his body began to warm. Ever since he'd become a wandering ghost, the idea of heat was alien to him. He never felt warm, and a pervasive cold hung around his body like a cloak of frost. He'd long grown used to it. To feel warmth now was more than a bit unsettling. He cautiously shuffled a couple of steps to the side. Shushian was usually quick to mock him, but with his mouth pressed shut, that was impossible. Now there was a long moment of very awkward silence after Jiang Xining's question. That silence was finally broken by Xuan Min, who had finished examining the diagrams. It's a feng shui array, he said. No shit, Shushian thought. Standing outside, Scribe Liu listened as noise after noise came from within until he couldn't take it anymore. He stared at the wall beside the door for a moment, then walked to the doorway and called inside. Master, did someone bump into something? Is that foolish son of mine causing trouble? He seemed to avidly detest this building, refusing to step inside even on pain of death. From the outside, he cast a disgusted glance at the paper ingots within. At the sound of his voice, Xuan Min stood up and walked past the partition to the building's outer chamber. Who lives in the building to the northwest? He asked Scribe Liu. Perplexed, Scribe Liu glanced toward the northeast of the compound. That's where I live. Xuan Min shot him a dubious glance. The northeast? The northeast? That northeast house is where my son Liu Jin lives. You know, my younger son who fell into the well earlier? Why do you ask, Master? Is there something wrong with those two buildings? Xuan Min didn't answer right away. Have you ever heard of a layout called Drawing the River to the Sea? He eventually asked. His face was inscrutable and emotionless, as if he were inquiring about something mundane, like what someone ate or drank. Are we counting that a face count? Because it's not strictly his face, it's his expression. I'm going to keep reading, but you let me know. In contrast, Scribe Liu's face turned an ashen gray. He stood there for a long time, stiff and frozen, before his eyes swirled to look in the direction of the cabinet inside the inner chambers. Seeing that it had been moved, his expression darkened. That's... I won't hide it from you, Master. I've been suffering from some health issues the last 2 years, so... While Scribe Liu was stammering outside the house, Jiang Xining had moved back a couple of paces, just enough to avoid Scribe Liu's line of sight. For one thing, a dead person standing in front of someone who'd recognize him was asking for trouble. For another, when Jiang Xining saw Scribe Liu, he was overcome with an incredible surge of resentment. He remembered how much his parents had suffered back in those days, and he couldn't help gritting his teeth. All right, so you're counting it as part of the face count. All right, so we're at 4. In the meantime, Liu Chong had noticed the talismans while he was organizing the paper ingots. With his mind the way it was, he was easily distracted. Same. He stared at the yellow paper talismans for a while, then dropped the ingots he was holding and shuffled over to kneel in front of the talismans. When a young child saw something novel, they'd always reach out to touch it. It didn't matter if it was clean or dirty, safe or dangerous. Liu Chong's mind was stuck at that naive age. He stared at the 3 copper nails for a while, then couldn't help reaching out to touch one of the points. It was razor sharp, as if freshly honed. It was capable of slicing through hair with ease, to say nothing of Liu Chong's thin skin. He ended up with a bloodied hand. Hey, don't move! Jiang Xining warned, but he was too late. Blood dripped down the nail, seeping into the yellow paper. Startled by Jiang Xining's cry, Liu Chang looked back up with a blank expression. For a moment, Jiang Xining sensed that the old house had fallen eerily quiet. It seemed like even the cold wind that had been relentlessly battering the walls had stopped. Ghosts were more sensitive than the living. He felt like there was no air around him at all, so unsettling was the quiet. Xuanmin had been standing at the door, eye to eye with Scribe Liu, but now he frowned and looked up, glancing at the sky. The wind was still. All was silent. All right, give me a second to take a couple gulps of tea, then we'll keep going. Okay. 46. Chapter 5. Ghost Fence. The unusual silence didn't last long. In just a few blinks, the wind roared back to life. It moaned and wailed, now inexplicably mournful, quite unlike how it had been. I guess it was just eerie before, and now it's mournful. As the wind howled back and forth, it grew louder and louder, like the spirits of the wild were crying in a spine-chilling chorus. Amid the ghostly wailing, a sudden droning filled the air, like the clash of metal on metal, but not quite the same. I have an idea. Like maybe. There we go. I imagine it might be more like droning, but that's the best I got. Shushian went taut where he lay between Xuanmin's fingers, for he knew that sound well. The object he was searching for made the exact same one. Spooky! To the northeast! Shushian struggled to lift his head and peer in that direction. Hadn't Xuanmin just asked who was living in the northeast building? As Shushian pondered this, the strange drone melded into the wind's wailing, soaring louder. In that instant, everyone felt as if they'd been struck hard on the back of their heads. Ow! Their ears rang, and their vision faded to black as they lost consciousness all at once. When the droning subsided and the darkness dropped from his eyes like sesame seeds, Shushian realized that something was amiss. Beneath him was the ground, paved with dark stone tiles. When he moved, he could feel the clumps of dark green moss there. Clearly, he'd fallen to the ground, and the bald donkey that had been holding him was nowhere to be found. Bald donkey at 6? And not just that guy. He looked around only to see that Scribe Liu had also vanished. Behind Shushian was still a building, but this one had proper doors, complete with intricate carvings on the wooden doorframe. Clearly, it wasn't Liu Chang's house, so he didn't expect that Jiang Xining and the others would be inside. In fact, this new location was eerily quiet. There was no sign of human presence, like an empty manor, vast yet soundless. What kind of accursed place is this? Muttered Shushian. He was in a rather troubling situation. If someone else had been thrust into a location like this one, they could at least walk around to learn more. But as a paraplegic, Shushian couldn't walk. In lieu of that, he sprawled out, spreading his creased paper body. After bracing his hands on the ground, he propped himself up, face to the sky, his head swaying as he admired the scenery. Other than the house behind him, there was some old ivy creeping along the wall to his left, as well as a tree that could be used for shade, its branches just barely stretching over the wall. To his right was a corridor and a courtyard wall. Through a narrow door, he could faintly make out a small garden within another part of the estate. From this angle, he could tell that it was a meticulously designed compound. Though, no matter how exquisite an estate was, it was still unsettling with no sign of life. Fortunately, Shushan had once been a master of the heavens. Even the creepiest of scenes couldn't frighten him. He just needed to be careful. Ahead of me is south, behind me is north. He hadn't been aimlessly looking around. He'd studied his surroundings to use the growth of moss along the tiles, the course of the ivy, and the orientation of the house to establish a general sense of direction. If he wasn't mistaken, he was in the northeast corner of the compound. The northeast corner. Shushian sucked in a breath. That sounds familiar. If this was still Scribe Liu's residence, then the northeast corner was where Scribe Liu's youngest son, Liu Jin, the boy who had almost drowned, resided. The drowning sound he heard had also come from this direction. Was the object he sought here? Shushian jolted and sat straight up. Holding his breath, he listened intently for a moment, but heard nothing, including the distinct droning. I was like, drowning. Is he just hearing some droning? Okay, sorry. The distinct droning he was looking for. So he heard nothing, including the distinct droning he was looking for. Sweeping aside a clump of moss in front of him, he grimaced in disdain before pressing himself face first to the ground. This time he heard a small, faint noise. Oddly enough, the noise seemed distant at times and close by at others, without a fixed source. That would mess me up. Moreover, it was so faint that the moment his attention wavered, he would lose it. The sound flitted back and forth, its manner almost teasing, and Shushian was soon deeply annoyed. Before long, his temper flared. He longed to rip up the entire ground, charge down there, and reduce everything to ashes. Alas, this flimsy paper body of his could not do any of that. As his anger grew, a gust of wind blew in from the latticed window on the wall. It was winter, so the winds blew with quite some force. Shushian, used to seizing opportunities, did not let this one pass him by. He spread his paper body to catch the breeze and was instantly lifted into the air. He then took the chance to grab a curling tendril of ivy. In a few quick moves, he had hoisted himself up onto the shade-giving tree. The tree was tall and straight, with few branches. One stretched over the wall, so Shushian chose this as the stop for his windy ride. His flimsy paper body draped over the branch. One wrong move would send him drifting to the ground, and his position didn't offer much of a view. So Shushian decided that he would transform, just as Jiang Xining had. A soft rush of air whipped around Shushian as he returned to his human form. In the light of day, his handsome features were crisp and charming. His dark eyes shone like cold pools, and beneath their misty surfaces lay a sharp, unbridled spirit. With a hand on the trunk and his other hand braced on the branch, he steadied his body and seated himself firmly upon the wall. After taking a spot, the first thing he did was look beyond the courtyard wall. He gave one glance before whipping his head back, his face blank as he stared into the courtyard. Then he looked outside again. He did this several times until a slight crack appeared in his expression, like porcelain that was about to shatter. Why the hell do things look exactly the same, both inside and outside of the wall? Now, this was quite the situation. If he wasn't mistaken, he'd encountered a ghost fence. To think someone dared to use a ghost fence on him! It was a first. Of course, this phenomenon couldn't have happened without reason. Something must have caused it. After a moment's thought, the only explanation that came to Shushian's mind was the feng shui layout Xuan Min had mentioned earlier. Drawing the river to the sea. Had something disrupted it, causing it to go haywire and trap them all inside? If that was the case, then why was this manor so eerily silent? Was that due to the ghost fence's influence, or was he truly the only one here? I guess we'll have to see. Although the view from the wall was superior to the one from the ground, it still wasn't spectacular. The courtyard was full of fire prevention walls of varying heights, blocking most of the view. All Shushian had seen amounted to white walls, dark roofs, gray tiles, and several doors that might or might not lead to dead ends. He studied the narrow doors around him, then glanced over the various walls, both high and low. Slowly, he began to grasp the situation. When a closed-off courtyard like this one was laid with a ghost fence, the key to breaking free lay in the 8 gates of the Chi Men Dunjia. So, an ancient form of Chinese divination rooted in Taoism and calculated over a 3 by 3 cosmic board of squares that corresponds to the 9 ways that individuals seek satisfaction. The 8 gates move around the 8 outer squares. Initiation, repose, life, injury, obstruction, scenery, fright, and death. Each gate led to a different path. To choose the wrong path meant getting trapped at best, or meeting pain or death at worst. Plus, this courtyard had been constructed in layers of squares. This meant its 8 gates would also be layered, complicating the solution further. I mean, it definitely complicates this situation, no matter what. Shushian wasn't an average person, so he refused to waste time figuring out such trivial details. He'd never imagined that he'd encounter a ghost fence while being unable to move. He'd rather someone just stab him than sit there and calculate where the life and death gates were. I have to look for people while dragging around a pair of crippled legs, he sneered. I don't hate myself that much. He'd always been proud. Even at the threat of death, he'd never humiliate himself thus, unless it was absolutely necessary. And if it was absolutely necessary, well, he'd rather someone kill him anyway. This miserable manor barely saw any wind, and there was not much to lean on. Even if he did figure out where to go, how was he supposed to get there? By crawling? Or sliding on his ass? Just the image made him grit his teeth. Forget it. Others might choose to crawl, but never him. Shushian leaned against the tree, his tongue pressed between his teeth as he thought. Eventually, he reached into the pocket of his robe and pulled out a sheet of yellow paper. The paper was wrinkled and creased, clearly having gone through some hard times. Shushian looked at it with disdain before pinching one edge and shaking it out. How dare my companions make me look for them, Shushian. Right, Truffle? On the paper was an ugly, almost illegible scrawl, but Shushian could read it. He had picked this up from a Taoist while passing through Rao Shou Prefecture. The man grew a thin, crooked mustache, wore a ragged cloth cap, and had a bruise on his temple that was indistinguishable from a birthmark or the result of a beating. He spent his days near a bridge selling the talisman he'd made himself. He was an odd fellow. As a seller of talismans, he should have ensured his calligraphy at least looked the part. Instead, he shamelessly hawked his stack of chicken scratch talismans, seemingly unworried that they might not sell. Shushian had spent a few days at his stall and examined the talismans he'd made. Most of them were mere decorative toys, but one or two of them had fluid brushstrokes that were decent for minor tasks. Still, they were very minor tasks. For example, the evil repelling talisman could ward off a few mosquitoes at best. The longevity talisman could, at most, alleviate some minor symptoms of illness. As for the one Shushian held right now, he'd watched the Taoist write it out. I call upon the thunder of the Dragon Lord of the South. Shushian squinted as he passed his eyes over the characters. The writing twisted and meandered, resembling earthworms as it wriggled all over the paper. That he could remember what it said was an impressive feat in itself. The talisman's thunder-calling purpose was easy to guess from its contents. It was a testament to how bored that Taoist had been to practice making something like this. Despite its name, summoning the Dragon Lord of the South, or whatever, was far beyond this crinkled talisman's capabilities. At most, it would bring a cloud or two to block the sun. However, in Shushian's hands, that same talisman became a different story, because the dragon the talisman wanted to summon was basically Shushian himself. Right now, his paper body was incapable of casting the spell, but he could use the talisman as the medium. It was worth a try, at least. He produced a small porcelain bottle from his lapels and pulled out its stopper. A strange metallic smell rose into the air, making him wrinkle his brow. This might have been his own blood, but that didn't mean he found the smell pleasing. Spreading the talisman flat on his palm, he dripped a drop of crimson blood upon it. The blood instantly soaked into the paper and bloomed into a stain. After putting the bottle away, he tossed the talisman into the air. The moment it left his fingers, flames erupted from the center of the bloodstain. In the blink of an eye, the paper turned into ash. As the ash scattered, a wailing wind whipped around him, and dark clouds rolled in from afar. The sky blackened as swiftly as if ink had poured across it. Next, crackling white lightning zigzagged down from the heavens, and a peal of thunder followed that exploded in Shushian's ears. Perhaps the lightning had struck the array's border, or perhaps it had shaken the foundation itself. Either way, there was a resounding, earth-shattering boom as the bolt of lightning dispersed through the ground. Shushian remained on the wall next to the tree, watching coolly as the gray tiles before him shattered to powder. He didn't even blink. So cool. The entire courtyard quaked and trembled. It was a long time before it finally calmed down. Looking up at the sky, Shushian was a little disappointed. Even with the talisman as his conduit, he'd only managed to conjure a single lightning strike. Nevertheless, the grand thunder wasn't completely in vain. It had torn open a crack somewhere in the array, making a hole in the once closed-off compound. Faint whispers poured in from the wound and filled the entire courtyard. So it was true. He wasn't the only person here. The others should have been drawn inside the array as well. They were just scattered across different sections and unaware of one another's presence. Shushian idly snapped a curled tendril from the ivy next to him and twined it around his fingers while leaning against the trunk. He closed his eyes, listening intently to the noises whistling through the narrow opening. He was trying to pick out anything unusual from among those jumbled fragment sounds. After a while, he indeed caught the hint of a bell? I got it. That's not right. Shushian clicked his tongue and frowned. The sound was muffled in the whipping wind. Either its source was far away, or the narrow opening it funneled through was creating the illusion of distance. It was reminiscent of the small bells dangling on an ox cart, but with some slight difference. Okay, mine was a little more stately instead of like jingle bells, but copper bells or copper coins. As this thought rose to his mind, the sound grew clearer. Sure enough, it was the tinkling of copper coins as they lightly struck each other. If this is a common occurrence, I might just have like a bag of coins next to me and just like shake it. We'll see. Um, Shushian opened his eyes, his expression blank, and the tendril of ivy wrapped around his hand broke in two with a snap. In that short second, the clatter of coins grew much closer. Shushian listened. It seemed to be coming from right outside the wall. The narrow door in the corridor suddenly cracked open, and Shushian looked up, still twisting his ivy tendril. A young monk, clad in a thin white hemp robe, walked toward the wall without a sound. Wearing such thin clothing on a freezing winter day like this one left even onlookers feeling cold, as if the white hemp itself carried the chill of frost. Xuanmin was already standing by the wall and refastening the string of copper coins he held to his waist when Shushian realized the monk never made any sound while walking. Had he made the clinking noises on purpose? Next to the wall, Xuanmin looked up, his calm gaze sweeping briefly over Shushian. The man on the wall was extraordinarily handsome, like a sword that had been sheathed so its sharp edges were concealed. But he seemed too thin, and his complexion was even more ashen thanks to the black robe he wore. The air of heavy illness around him juxtaposed with his natural sharpness, and he seemed at once complicated and enigmatic. Whenever Shushian wore an expressionless face, he gave off the misleading impression of prudence and restraint. The misleading impression. I love how they just put it out there. With that image of aloofness, he looked down at Xuanmin for a moment until he couldn't stop himself from rolling his eyes. Hello, Sanvi. Welcome. We're about halfway through what we're going to be reading for tonight. Nice. I hope you enjoyed your other stream as well. But yeah, we are now stuck in a array, and Xuanmin just found Shushian. So we shall see where they go from here. It is definitely a good week for streams. He looked down at Xuanmin for a moment, until he couldn't stop himself from rolling his eyes. It had to be you. The guy did almost end up blowing up a courtyard. Angrily, he crushed the snapped tendril in his hand into a ball. He was the type who couldn't keep his hands still, not even when he was up on a wall. After casting a few resentful glances at Xuanmin, he pitched the crumpled ball of ivy at him. Oh, very cool. Xuanmin shook his head and raised his hand to catch the projectile. What was that thunderstorm about? He asked. Shushian arched a brow. You're not going to ask who I am? After all, he'd been a clump of moss back when Xuanmin had picked him up, then a flimsy paper doll. He'd never appeared before him in human form. Xuanmin opened his hand. Sitting in his slender palm was the evidence of Shushian's antics, the ball of ivy. He was a man of few words, his expression always indifferent, but his open palm conveyed one message. There's only one troublemaker on your level. I'd recognize you even if you burned to ashes. Oh, nice! The corpse flower bloom. I've seen that one before. It's pretty cool. Xuanmin tossed the ball of ivy beneath the tree, then reminded Shushian once more. You haven't said what that thunderstorm was about. Oh, said Shushian, unconcerned. Nothing much. Just wanted to let everyone know I was here. Makes it a lot easier for them to find me. Xuanmin had nothing to say to that. The lightning had practically rent both sky and earth with its terrifying power and roaring thunderclap, ready to blast the Liu residents into smithereens. All of that just to make a sound, to tell everyone that someone was waiting here. At those words, a crack appeared in Xuanmin's frosty visage for the very first time. Shushian found his expression hilarious, and his own face relaxed into a half smile. Oh, you followed the thunder here yourself. Looks like it wasn't in vain. Good thing you got here fast. I was considering whether to call another. His antics are definitely how he is, Ruby. Oh, yay! I'm glad that the eaglet is doing well. Xuan Min stared at him in silence, then said coldly, "If you did, searching for the 8 gates would be pointless. I suppose with everything reduced to ashes, we could save on funeral fees." "You're a monk. How could you talk about money? You bald." Shushian turned his face away and swallowed the donkey part of the epitaph. Then he continued very seriously, "Aren't you afraid of offending Buddha?" Xuanmin didn't answer. The person who summoned lightning for fun has no right to say such a thing. Do we want to count that as donkey or not? Because he held back. You said you were looking for the 8 gates just now. Did you find them? Yay! If you did, that makes things easy. Take me with you. And if you didn't, don't worry, I'll think of a way to summon more lightning. Maybe we can blast this array right open. Count it. All right. 7. Despite saying so, he thought, "You better tell me you found them. I only had one thunderstorm talisman with me, and it was single use." Fortunately, Xuanmin didn't let him down. He nodded. "You can get off that wall." Then he turned and walked away. His white acolyte robe fluttered like the clouds. After just a few steps, he was disappearing into the distance. Not long after, he stopped and looked back at Shushian, who hadn't moved. Shushian patted his legs nonchalantly. "Useless. I can't walk," he boldly declared. Xuanmin frowned, thinking that Shushian was playing some trick again. "You ran quite fast for an evil spirit earlier, didn't you?" After all, he'd flipped himself onto the servant boy's collar in seconds. His nimbleness spoke for itself. Shushian sneered. "You must be blind on top of stupid. Was I using my legs to run then? No, I borrowed someone else's." The tactless monk and the troublemaking evil spirit stared at each other for a long time. Finally, the former acceded. He returned to the wall. Shushian's legs lay hidden beneath his black robes, but through them, Xuanmin could see the jut of his knees. Most of the time, the legs of those who were bedridden and incapable of walking were gangly and atrophied from disuse, but Shushian's were not. The outline of his legs through the robes revealed that they were no different from an average person's, not at all like a typical paraplegic's. Xuanmin scrutinized them for a bit, then reached out and grabbed Shushian's ankle. Shushian jumped, startled. Had he any feeling left in his legs, he would have instantly sent Xuanmin flying with a kick. "You dare touch them? Think you can just grab a dragon's claws, huh? You must have a death wish." Xuanmin took in his reaction. When startled, a person with functioning legs would not move only their upper body while their lower body remained still. It seemed Shushian was telling the truth. His legs were indeed paralyzed. Lifting his gaze, Xuanmin formed a mudra with one hand while extending the other one to Shushian. "Come down here." Shushan looked at his palm askance, then eyed Xuanmin's stature. The loose robe further accentuated Xuanmin's tall and slender frame. His shoulders and back were rod straight, and it was clear that his thinness wasn't the fragile, willowy type. It harbored strength. It still, he wasn't exactly muscular. I love this picture. We are eating good tonight in regards to pictures. One per chapter? What? I love his curls. They're so pretty. And how the robes are so flowy. I love it. Thunder is just for them to know he is waiting for them and he announced his presence. And totally not because Shushion has no patience, right? They are so dramatic. It does look rather romantic. Shushion raised his chin, skeptical. You intend to support me with only one arm? You're kidding. Unfazed, Xuanmin left his hand outstretched. Fine, but if I end up breaking something, you'll have to take responsibility, Shushian said blissfully. Yeah, I really like this artist. He braced his arms against the wall and leaped off. In the next second, he transformed from man to paper doll with poof. He even adjusted himself to Xuanmin's palm. The paper figure was now smaller as it fell, no larger than a hand. It fluttered like a leaf down into Xuanmin's palm, though its spread arms and legs made it look more like a starfish. Shushian is such a drama queen. He's such a big drama queen. After witnessing Shushian in his human form being confronted with this lifeless, painted face, reminiscent of a wide-eyed corpse, was still a jarring experience, even with the size difference. Xuanmin averted his gaze, unwilling to assault his eyes any further, and placed Shushian back inside the pouch. However, Xuanmin showed a bit of sympathy this time. He didn't shove Shushian into the bottom of the pouch, but left his head out in the open. That way, he could lean against the pouch's opening and breathe a little from time to time. I mean, they're dragons. They're kind of allowed to be dramatic. Surprisingly, Shushian remained unsatisfied. Somewhere else, please. Despite his words, his tone was anything but polite. Xuanmin found himself caught off guard. After a few exchanges, Shushian had already forgotten that he was the captive and was starting to throw his weight around. Had there ever been a prisoner who would so boldly demand a master bedroom? Looking down at the doll, Xuanmin asked, "Where else?" A paper doll didn't have a skeleton, so Shushian easily twisted his head the entire way around. The shoulder! When Xuanmin didn't reply, Shushian even had the audacity to continue. I can't see anything from this stupid spot. The angle's too low. I want to be on your shoulder. His shoulder? Why not ask for the heavens next? No longer afraid of falling? Xuanmin asked blandly. What? Are your shoulders lopsided? Or do you bounce when you walk? Why would I fall if you don't sway about? Shushian snapped back without a second thought. Shushian really had a comeback for everything. I demand upsies. Or uppies. Yeah. Defeated, Xuanmin shook his head. Come up. He then paid no further heed to his passenger and started walking. Shushian crawled out of the pouch and waited, but Xuanmin didn't reach down to help him. Your hand? Shushan soon demanded. Climb up yourself, Shuanmin said. Shushan stared in sully silence. To a pampered lord like him, crawling around on the ground was a deep humiliation. He'd rather die than do so. To climb using his arms like a monkey, that was just barely tolerable. He looked up, assessed Xuanmin's height, and chose to debase himself, stretching out his precious dragon claws and catching them on the monk's robes. Xuanmin's clothes had a peculiar texture. The fabric wasn't quite like raw hemp, but neither did it feel like the processed kind. The weave wasn't particularly delicate, but it was still soft, and the spotless fabric was bleached, almost snow white. They didn't look like robes that the average monk could afford, and there was an indescribable smell to them, like a pine forest deep within the mountains, blanketed in fresh snow. The feather-light Shushan swiftly climbed from Xuanmin's hip to his collar with a few scampering moves. Getting from his collar to the shoulder only required a quick flip of Shushian's paper body, and it was the shorter route as well. Yet he chose not to go that way. Instead, he clung to Xuanmin's collar while gazing at his shoulders, then looked up once more. The bizarre angle afforded him a view of Xuanmin's slender, pointed chin, but he couldn't see anything beyond that. Shushian briefly adjusted his position, then flung himself upward to latch onto Xuanmin's chin. Like a cat with its tail on fire, he climbed up the bridge of Xuanmin's nose, then pushed himself off Xuanmin's brow to leap sideways onto his shoulder. Though no feet were involved, it was an apt demonstration of stepping on someone's face. All those offerings go straight to their head. Well, they're also climbing on heads, so... Oh, Shushian. Xuanmin didn't know what to say to such a show of audacity and fearlessness. Shushian couldn't have been an insignificant demon. However, Xuanmin could not sense much of Shushian's original body in his aura, making it difficult for the monk to determine exactly what kind of evil spirit the paper doll was. Hello, Esper Lady. How you doing tonight? We are in the second chapter that we're reading tonight. Glad you're doing good. So, we were at the Liu residence. We accidentally activated an array, and we are now stuck in it. Shushian had a lightning talisman that allowed Xuanmin to find him, and now they are finally going and looking for someone else, and he just stepped on Xuanmin's face, literally, as a paper doll. So that is where we are now. Okay. Speaking of his original body, Xuanmin eyed Shushian on his shoulder. Earlier, you told that rogue scholar Ghost that you're still alive. Shushian adjusted himself until he found a comfortable position, then he leaned back on his hands and dismissively replied, Yeah, so it was wrong of you to capture me. Oh yeah. Here, it's literally a page away. Here's the picture. Very flowy. There's another picture you missed at the beginning, but yes. Yeah, so it was wrong of you to capture me. Where is your original body? Xuanmin asked. Some people were just naturals when it came to hitting people's sore spots. Jiang Xining, that skinny reed, was one of them, and this bald donkey was one as well. Yeah, of course. Donkey count is at 8. Just where was his original body? Even Shushian himself didn't know. That day in Huameng County, Guangdong, someone had stripped him of his tendons and bones. Then a torrential downpour had followed, causing the tides to surge. The towering waves swept him right into the sea. Consumed by unbearable agony, he lost consciousness. By the time he opened his eyes again, he found that his spirit had already left his body. Without the support of his spirit, his massive body couldn't maintain its form and shrank, transforming into a golden marble. He'd hoped to hide that marble away and return to his body once his soul was sufficiently restored. Alas, the heavens played a cool prank on him. While his mind was still in a haze, a large wave washed the marble ashore. Through the seawater, he could only watch as a fisherman picked it up. By the time he was fully conscious and ready to give chase, the man was gone. Recalling the events made Shushian's temper flare, and his eventual answer was annoyed and clicked. I'm still searching for it. Xuanmin looked askance at him again. Losing your own body? Quite an impressive feat. Shushian wasn't being blasé about the matter. It was just that finding his body was a trivial issue compared to exacting revenge on the one who'd stripped him of his bones. He couldn't find his body because his vitality was greatly damaged, severing the connection between his spirit and physical form. Once he was fully recovered, he'd be able to sense its location. At that point, finding it would be child's play. However, even though he wasn't actively searching for his body, that didn't mean he'd remain indifferent if it should show up by itself. Shushian recalled that droning noise and couldn't stop himself. The layout of this compound is a bit But as Shushian was speaking, Xuanmin calmly walked across the main hall and passed through two narrow doors without running into any danger. When Xuanmin was about to open another narrow door, Shushian cut himself off and changed the subject. Wait! Why does this place look familiar? No, it was more than just familiar. The ground paved with dark tiles, a house with an ornately carved door, an ancient tree peeking over the wall, snaking ivy. Wasn't this where Shushian had woken up earlier? So Xuanmin had taken him around and around, only to end up back at the original location? Xuanmin shook his head. That place was fake. This is the real location. Fine, Shushian thought, glancing sidelong at Xuanmin. Since he knows the 8 gates well, he shouldn't have made any major mistakes in his calculations. I guess I'll accept whatever he says, for now. Shushian watched as Xuanmin stepped through the narrow doorway and made his way to the vacant building. What's the use of finding the real location anyway? This is the life gate, Xuanmin said. By leaving through here, we can break the array. Shushian was about to speak when, unexpectedly, he heard voices coming from the empty room. Voices that shouldn't have been there. Xuanmin immediately froze, pivoting on his toes to stealthily conceal himself behind a pillar, the paper figure still perched on his shoulder. Why were there people here? Oh boy, the next chapter is a hefty one. All right. All right. Okay. Chapter 6, Bronze Mirror. Shushian carefully peeped around the pillar from his perch on Xuanmin's shoulder. Fortunately, the paper doll was inconspicuous and easy to overlook. The voices, which sounded a little familiar, grew clearer. They waited until the door creaked open and a youth took a step through, his movements clumsy. Only then did Shushan realize that the voice belonged to Scribe Liu's son, Liu Chong. Had they really managed to find someone else so effortlessly? Who was he speaking to? Jiang Xining? But Shushan wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. He quickly sensed that something was amiss. While Liu Chong was still clad in a thick robe, it wasn't the one he'd been wearing earlier. The original one had been blue-gray, but now he was dressed in maroon. His sleeves were even trimmed with crimson, imparting a somewhat festive vibe. As the thought crossed Shushian's mind, he saw Liu Chong turn around to help another person out the door. His movements were awkward. Even the action of supporting someone required considerable effort on his part, but they also revealed the depths of his sincerity. The person he was helping was an elderly woman with her hair in a bun. Her hair was white and sparse, her bun only a little limp tuft on the back of her head. Her face was gaunt and full of deep-set wrinkles, the corners of her eyes drooping. There was a purplish hue to her lips that marked her as ill. She had one hand on Liu Chang's wrist, gripping it tightly the way a withered root clung to the earth. Her other hand rested on a dull wooden cane. Despite the aid, she still struggled to step over the threshold. The elderly often had trouble lifting their legs, and it was obvious that the threshold was too high for her. After a moment, the old lady finally stood outside. She supported herself with both hands on the cane and smiled at Liu Chong. Chong-er is so capable. Go inside and bring me a wooden stool. Liu Chong nodded. When he stepped into the building, the old lady added, "Oh, bring the lanterns and the paper ingots as well." Unfortunately, Liu Chong only had the capacity to focus on one thing at a time. The old lady had given him 3 instructions at once, which proved too complicated for him. He stood with one foot inside and the other outside, staring blankly at the lady as he struggled to articulate his words. Wooden stool? Ingots? The old lady sighed almost soundlessly, then smiled at him. Chong-er is so smart. Liu Chong smiled foolishly in her direction and hurried into the room. Moments later, he emerged holding a wooden stool in one hand and a large cloth bag in the other. With both hands occupied, he seemed unsure how to step outside. He hesitated at the threshold for a moment before awkwardly stumbling out, then handing the stool and the bag to the old lady. He tried to help steady the stool and open the bag, but in his clumsiness, he almost toppled the stool and inadvertently pulled the cloth bag's knot too tight. It was hard to tell if he was genuinely helping or making more trouble. However, the old lady showed no sign of impatience. She continued to smile at Liu Chong as she said, "Go back inside and get 2 lanterns." Liu Chong, feeling commended, became even more enthusiastic. "Okay," he said, before heading into the house and rummaging around. Not long after, he returned with 2 red lanterns. "It's almost New Year's. Time to replace the white lanterns." The old lady instructed Liu Chong to swap the lanterns hanging over the door for the festive red ones, then sat back down on the wooden stool, squinting her eyes as she tugged on the knot he had tangled. After a long while, she managed to loosen it. The bag opened, and the pile of paper ingots within spilled to the ground. The old lady carefully pulled a fire starter from her pocket. Using the flame of the white lantern to light the material inside, she tossed it onto the pile. Warm yellow flames instantly roared to life, and the heap of ingots rapidly shriveled in the heat, as if the essence had been sucked out of them. One ingot in the corner escaped the flames and was caught by the wind instead. The gust blew it over to the pillar, and Xuan Min reached out, catching it in his hand. He turned the ingot over. Sure enough, there were several characters written on the bottom. The messy handwriting identified it as Liu Chong's work. Shu Xian leaned closer, squinting to decipher the writing. It seemed to be a name, Liu Xian. He recalled the illegible scribbles on the ingots in Liu Chong's room. Could they have said this name? On further thought, that didn't seem right. The characters for Liu Xian were clear and legible, so why would they have been a jumbled mess on the ingots? Besides, those smudged ink stains had looked like more than two characters. Oh, sweet baby boy. Look at him and his grandma. He's so happy to be with his grandma. What a sweetie. I'm glad he had someone who was there for him, even if she died. She probably died. So sweet. Yeah. Having examined the writing on the ingot, Xuan Min let it go. The wind whisked the ingot back, where it caught the last flicker of flame and was completely consumed. The old lady poked at the remnants of the embers with her cane and murmured, "My health hasn't been good this year. I can't move my waist any more, so there are fewer paper ingots compared to last year. Use them the best you can." Liu Chong sat quietly on the threshold listening. When he heard this, he dashed back into the house and returned with a small stack of yellow paper. Then he hunched over and began folding, mumbling, I can. I'll do it." The old lady turned to him. Under the firelight, her eyes shone warmly, but they also seemed a little anguished. After folding one, he held it and smiled up at the old lady, his expression expectant, waiting for praise. The old lady rewarded him with a glowing smile. "My Chong heir's ingots are even better than mine. Here." Liu Chong handed the ingot to her, telling her to toss it into the dwindling fire. The old lady waved her hands. "No rush. Save it for the next time. It doesn't have a name, so you shouldn't burn it. If you did, how would they know who it belongs to? Your great-grandfather wouldn't be able to take it." Liu Chong nodded thoughtfully, then lowered his head, earnestly folding a new one. The old lady tapped her cane against the ground, extinguishing the scant sparks lingering there. When she finished, she started poking at the ashes again, making sure that any paper at the bottom would burn completely too. As she worked the ashes, she began to recite. "With lots of money comes food and play. Gold and silver be at peace today." As Liu Chong folded the money, he unconsciously echoed her words, murmuring, "Food and play, gold and silver, be at peace today." Soon, the entire stack of paper ingots had been reduced to ash. The old lady tapped her cane, then pulled Liu Chong back into the house. But he seemed to run into something. Right after they went in, a loud crash, like the sound of porcelain shattering, echoed from inside. "Don't panic. It's fine. It's fine." The old lady's voice came faintly from within. Perhaps Liu Chong had scared himself with his mistake, and she was rushing to console him. Not long after, the old lady and Liu Chong re-emerged from the house. She was using the front of her padded robe to carry a few pieces of broken porcelain while Liu Chong held. Shushan squinted from behind the pillar for a long time before he realized it was a small bronze mirror. Why a small bronze mirror? He was genuinely puzzled. He watched as the old lady instructed Liu Chong to dig a hole at the old tree next to the courtyard wall. They placed the broken porcelain inside, then set the bronze mirror down beside it. While they buried the mirror, the old lady murmured two more lines. We place the mirror, changing misfortune to blessing. May they all rest in peace. After burying both the shards and the mirror, they re-entered the house. Liu Chong may have been disabled, but he had some understanding of filial piety. He helped the old lady inside before stepping over the threshold himself. Shu Xian turned and whispered to Xuanmin, This life gate is so odd. Will it only let us go after playing through all these old memories? Xuanmin's brows pinched. He raised a finger to his lips, telling Shu Xian to be quiet. Too late. Liu Chong, who had just stepped inside, seemed to hear something. He poked his head back out, his expression puzzled. He just so happened to look at the pillar, meeting Shu Xian's gaze. Logically speaking, the paper doll was tiny. It would have been hard to make out its painted face from 4 inches away, let alone a distance of 7 to 8 paces. But Liu Chong really seemed to have seen him. Shu Xian couldn't tell if it was just his imagination, but Liu Chong's foolish eyes seemed to suddenly sharpen. Those black pupils fixed right on him, sending a chill down his spine. Within seconds, the wind in the courtyard stilled before blowing again from an entirely different direction. The abrupt change was indescribably eerie. Liu Chong stepped out, and from within the house came slow, lumbering footsteps, stiff yet shuffling, distinctly different from the old lady's gait. Xuanmin stopped hiding behind the pillar. Right as Liu Chong stepped forward, the monk backed into the narrow door and quickly darted behind it. The shuffling footsteps didn't stop. In fact, they drew closer. Scanning the area around them, Xuanmin resolutely chose the corridor on the right. He cut diagonally across the courtyard, avoiding all the main buildings. Instead, he strode over to a narrow door in a corner. Shu Xian clung to his robe with a death grip. Why did things suddenly change? He couldn't resist stealing a glance backward, only to see the old lady and the young man following them through the first narrow door, their gait, posture, expressions, and movements imbued with a harsh, uncanny emptiness. I don't know why, but the life gate became the death gate, Xuanmin said as he pushed open the second narrow door. So the 8 gates have changed from your initial calculations? What happens if we accidentally enter the death gate? All the hazards will be triggered, and similar things will happen at all the gates. We must not let those people see us. The moment they do, they'll pursue us. Shu Xian recalled the immediate change in the old lady and young man's demeanors. How long will they chase us? Until we die, said Xuanmin. That's not ominous. With that, Xuanmin crossed over the threshold and stepped through the narrow door. This time it led to a hall. For some reason, 3 or 4 maids were gathered around the table. One of the maids said, That old lady hasn't gotten any better. Her complexion is even worsening. Did that Jiang family prescribe the wrong medicine? Those quacks will get her killed. No idea, another round-faced girl said. We don't know anything about the prescriptions. We just have to take good care of her. I was really scared last night. She could barely breathe, but I found the courage to thump her back. The 2 of you were on watch tonight, aren't you? Monitor her carefully. I love how Chinese mirror worlds turn into death worlds at the drop of a hat. Yep. Before she could finish, another maid rushed in, breathless. Quick! Get to the back! The old lady might... Before she could finish her sentence, Xuanmin spun around and exited the narrow door. Shu Xian couldn't resist turning back for a glance, then slapped Xuanmin hard on the back. They spotted us again. Hurry! As he spoke, the footsteps in the room abruptly changed direction, all pattering toward the narrow door. That was twice they'd opened a door to find themselves being chased by a bunch of bizarre entities. How great was that? Just then, Xuan Min pivoted to arrive at a narrow door number 3, completely undaunted. "Ye wise one, can you think first before opening another door?" Shushian screamed to himself. At its core, Scribe Liu's residence was a standard rectangular compound. The more one cared about feng shui, the less they would employ bizarre or outrageous designs. Although there were doors and walls everywhere, the 8 cardinal directions still reigned supreme: east, west, south, north, southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest. These 8 cardinal directions corresponded precisely to the 8 gates of the Chimen Dunjia. Initiative, repose, life, injury, obstruction, scenery, fright, and death. Of the 8 gates, initiation, repose, and life were usually auspicious, while death, fright, and injury were calamitous. Scenery and obstruction were neutral. For Shushian and Xuanmin, they could safely exit the array as long as they found the life gate. But while the 8 gates were simple to calculate in a static environment, things became troublesome if they were to shift for any reason. That was what plagued Shushian and Xuanmin now. The life gate they'd pinpointed had inexplicably transformed into the death gate. Not only was it no longer an exit, it had also released a horde of bizarre, dangerous entities. Don't you just hate when that happens? Nonetheless, Xuanmin opened the new door without hesitation. Shushian didn't even have time to stop him. What is the background of this story? So basically, a paper effigy dragon meets a monk that is very mysterious. The dragon is trying to get his body back, and the monk is doing monk things, being mysterious. That is the basic premise of this book. And also we have unfortunate Jiang Xining along for the ride. That is basically the premise. We will figure out the main ideas as we go along, but we are still just setting out. But I hope that helps. Jibrian Amin. I'm so sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. There is a lot of Taoism tropes in here, which is why they explain things. So he is a Taoist monk. So if that's what you meant. And Buddhist themes in this particular work. Nonetheless, Xuanmin opened the new door. Yeah. Right now, this is Taoist, I think. Oh, good. I tried. Okay. If it had been up to the old able-bodied Shushian, he would have thought 8 gates, smate gates. To hell with that left, death, fright, or injury nonsense. I'll open them all. Let's see if they can stop me from leaving. If it still doesn't work, I'll blast them all with lightning. Cultivation. Yeah. Yeah. Truffle, maybe you might be able to answer that better, Truffle. He had immense confidence in his power. There was no way he'd fall victim to such childish tricks. Things were different now. Xuanmin was the one calling the shots, and Shushian was only a sheet of paper clinging to his shoulder. He hadn't known Xuanmin for long, only a couple of hours. After these scant few interactions, Shushian was still in the dark about how powerful the monk actually was. He acted like a high priest, and sometimes he was quite good at intimidating others with his gambits. However, Shushian hadn't seen him do anything substantial yet. For example, could he summon rain or thunder? Could he offer rest to wandering ghosts like Jiang Xining? When it came down to it, could he beat the array's tiny old lady, possibly a vengeful spirit, in a fight? Seriously, not to put too fine a point on it, but could he beat the array's tiny old lady? Definitely a vengeful spirit in a fight. Shushian had his doubts. After all, Xuan Min needed to use copper scraps to capture ghosts. He asked himself, have you ever seen a high monk who caught demons by scooping them up? Then he answered his own question. Never. Yeah, no worries. Um, Thank you, Truffle. Xuanmin knit his brows and shot the grumbling paper doll on his shoulder a quick glance. His slender, attractive fingers rested upon the door. Previously, he'd shown some restraint while opening the doors, keeping the action whisper silent. Now, he seemed to throw caution to the wind. He unceremoniously threw the door open, and the crimson door struck the wall with a bang. Just as Xuan Min was about to step through, he noticed that Shu Xian was moving again, quietly climbing down his robe without a word. He clambered away from the high view he had whined for, wordlessly returning to the pouch at Xuan Min's waist. Hanging his head in resignation, for a moment he slid along the seams and into the pouch. He even docilely pulled the pouch's opening shut. This sequence of events conveyed a very clear message. Go dig your grave by yourself. I'm not participating. Xuan Min had nothing to say to that. Behind this narrow door he had opened lay a square courtyard. Its north and south led to the front and middle halls, respectively, and it was flanked by two corridors. Strangely, the loud noise Xuan Min had made while opening the door hadn't alerted anyone inside. Shushian sat in the hidden pouch, chin in hand. He waited for a moment, but he heard no approaching footsteps. Unable to contain his curiosity, he peeked out. There were no ghostly figures in the courtyard. It was eerily quiet, except for the faint laughter drifting in from the front hall. It sounded like Scribe Liu. Shushian's opinion of Scribe Liu was deep in the negatives, but he was little interested in what was happening in the front hall. While Shushian pondered, Xuan Min stepped through the door. He made his way along the corridor to the front hall's back door. That door didn't offer a view into the hall because a large partition stood before them, blocking their line of sight. Entering the hall would require walking around it. Shushian watched as the brainless, fearless Xuan Min walked through the door and placed himself behind the partition. Here, the conversation in the front hall could be heard with clarity. Shushian couldn't tell how many people were in the hall, but only two were speaking. One of them was Scribe Liu, while the other seemed to be an elderly guest, judging by his hoarse voice and slow speech. Recently, the townsfolk have been talking about a rumor, the old man said. I don't know if it's true. What rumor? Asked Scribe Liu. The incident of the fire at the Jiang family clinic. Have you heard anything about it, old friend? Of course, of course. For some reason, Scribe Liu's words were oddly stiff. He repeated himself several times before raising his teacup and taking a sip. Then he clicked his tongue and sighed. The county office has taken care of the bodies. They were charred beyond recognition. Wouldn't have believed they were human bodies if the coroner hadn't said so. I still remember when I came to this town many years ago and had the fortune of meeting Dr. Jiang. Never did I imagine. The old man sighed. But everyone in town says the Jiang family misdiagnosed your mother and prescribed the wrong medicine, which led to her passing. Scribe Liu picked up the teacup and drank another mouthful. The sound of his swallowing was so loud even Shu Xian could hear it. It seemed as if there was a tempest boiling inside Scribe Liu. After gulping down 2 more mouthfuls of tea, he slammed the cup back onto the table with sudden vigor. Don't bring that up again. The Jiang family has received their retribution. I won't hold that against them any more. I only feel sorry for my poor mother. She worked so hard most of her life and just had managed to enjoy a few years of happiness, yet. Seeing Scribe Liu so agitated, the old man quickly consoled him. All right, let's not talk about it. Quack doctors bring great harm. Shu Xian frowned at those words. He recalled the day he entered the Jiang family's dilapidated residence. The vast courtyard had been littered with broken tiles, choked by overgrown weeds, and shrouded in an eerie silence. It had been daytime, with no lack of sun. Yet an impressive sorrow hung in the air, never dissipating. Carried into the courtyard by the wind, he happened to come face to face with Jiang Xining, who was standing in a corner. Only then did Shu Xian realize that the sorrow was emanating from the rogue ghost. Unfortunately, Jiang Xining was in a fog. He could recall the events of his life, but nothing after his death. Why are you bunkered here? Shu Xian had asked. You should reincarnate if you're dead. If you keep wasting time, you'll miss your chance and never be able to. Jiang Xining looked bewildered for a moment, then said, Oh, I'm waiting for my parents. We'll go together. They're getting on in years, so I need to take care of them. He's just a good boy. I know he's a man, but what a sweet boy. Shu Xian was sure that this ghost must have fried his brain reading too many books, since everything he said was nonsense. And there we go with Shu Xian. Okay, so where are they? Shu Xian asked, grimacing. Jiang Xining sighed. They probably went the wrong way, but I don't have a proper body, so I can't leave this courtyard to look for them. Shu Xian stared at him for a while before saying, Very well. I'll agree to lend you a hand, but on one condition. Say it. Jiang Xining was frank. Let me stay here for a few days. After Shu Xian provided Jiang Xining with a paper body, he started searching for his parents in town every night. After 3 days, he'd scoured the entire town twice over, but found nothing. At that time, Shu Xian thought that Jiang Xining's parents had already left for the afterlife. However, after he listened to Scribe Liu's words, a new idea began to take shape in Shu Xian's mind. Right as he went to climb back onto Xuanmin's shoulder to tell him his thoughts, the 2 people in the hall spoke again. By the way, he heard Scribe Liu say, I nearly forgot. I mentioned that I received a rare item and wanted to show it to you, didn't I? Let's go to the back. Shu Xian poked Xuanmin, but with the feebleness of his paper body, it felt more like a tickle than a poke. Xuanmin frowned slightly at the evil spirit tickling his side. Before Xuanmin could leave through the door, he abruptly noticed someone standing next to him. The newcomer's eyes were unusually dark, devoid of any light, lending him a haunted look. 2 dark shadows curved under his eyes, and his ashen complexion had a greenish tinge. His appearance out of the blue was more than a little unsettling. An ordinary person who turned around to see this ghostly sight would have jumped right into the rafters in fear. However, Xuanmin and Shu Xian were no ordinary people. One was brazen and audacious, while the other was unflappable and implacable, having gone through his entire life without knowing fear. That's impressive. Both the walking glacier monk and the evil spirit hiding by his waist turned their expressionless faces to look at the interloper. His face grew even greener as he leaned back and held his chest. Why did you suddenly turn around? You scared me to death. Both Xuanmin and Shushian blinked at him, and Xuanmin lifted his hand. This bookworm standing in front of them, none other than Jiang Xining, really had fried his brain with reading. I resent that. Reading does not fry your brain. It rather improves it. Seeing him, Shushian grew a little worried. If Jiang Xining had heard what Scribe Liu had said, he might just start brawling with him in the front hall. Brawling, not bawling. Could this Reed even take on those two geezers? Yet Jiang Xining's tone seemed to indicate he was ignorant of the conversation about his parents. Shushian was somewhat relieved. At least he didn't have to worry about Jiang Xining dashing out to dig his own grave again. He leaned out of the pouch and waved disdainfully, trying to shoo the ghost away. Turn around. Let's get going. Why the rush? Jiang Xining asked. Despite his occasional retort to Shushian, Jiang Xining was soft-natured at heart. It was this softness that carried him through days of tireless playing Shushian's gopher, enduring ridicule while keeping him quiet with food. Even as Jiang Xining questioned Shushian, the former's body was already following the latter's instructions. He turned around and stepped through the door, despite his baffled expression. At this turn of events, Xuanmin dropped his hand, only to hear Shushian say, What did you raise your hand for, you bald donkey? Did you grow sick of this bookworm stupidity? Were you going to beat him up? All right, donkey is at 9. You're the one who deserves a beating, Xuanmin thought. Jiang Xining was flabbergasted. Wait, what did I do? Why hit me? Just keep walking. Enough nonsense from you, Shushian said. To think such a troublemaker had the nerve to tell others to shut up. However, Shushian wasn't entirely incorrect about Xuanmin's intentions. A ghost who took human form by possessing an object like paper was sustained by a tiny wisp of yin energy. There was a vital acupoint about 4 inches down on the back of the head. If someone struck this point, the yin energy sustaining the ghost would disperse, and they'd return to their original form. Worried that Jiang Xining might cause a mess with his presence, Xuanmin had been on the verge of forcing him back into a paper form for easier transport. That's funny. After all, having a single insolent paraplegic on his hands was enough. Wasn't a second hanger-on who had full use of his limbs just a result would just result in chaos? But Jiang Xining seemed surprisingly cooperative. Easing off for now, Xuanmin decided to tolerate the ghost and followed him out the door. Once they were through, Xuanmin grabbed the back of Jiang Xining's collar, pivoted on his toes, and pulled him to hide behind the narrow wall separating the corridor from the side of the building. As long as he desired it, Xuanmin could keep his steps whisper silent. His acolyte's robes were thin and light, and their hems brushed over a withered twig and grazed the wall behind it until the fabric fell back in place around his ankles. Despite everything, his robes remained spotless and free of mud, and the twig didn't so much as twitch. Xuanmin's hands are full, right? It's funny. Sorry, 1 second. Shushian swept his eyes over the wall and motionless twig, then looked at the copper coins dangling from the monk's waist. He's truly enigmatic, Shushan thought. I'll think about that. A lot of what we do is just the read through. Um, but anyone is welcome to ask questions at any time. Mostly, this is just a read through channel. I personally just like asking questions and engaging with the audience. Xuanmin had hidden them just in time. Right as the edge of his robe fell back behind the wall, Scribe Liu and his friend exited through the back door. Both men were getting on in years. Their hearing was no longer sharp, so neither of them noticed anything was amiss. Jiang Xining caught sight of Scribe Liu's back from his spot behind the wall. Despite his unhappiness at seeing him, he was also a little confused. Why was Xuan Min avoiding Scribe Liu like the man was trouble he didn't wish to waste time on? Fortunately, Jiang Xining was deeply afraid of inconveniencing others. He never spoke out of turn, never acted on impulse, and never created trouble for anyone else. Swallowing all his questions, he stayed behind the wall and hardly dared to breathe as he watched Scribe Liu and the stranger pass through the courtyard into the main hall. Just as Scribe Liu was about to step through the door, a somewhat muffled voice rang out. Dad? From their hiding place, Shushian said dully, Fantastic. The real fool's here. Such great timing. Sure enough, Liu Chong had found his way here. He stood beneath the eaves of the corridor as he called out to Scribe Liu. The first thing Shushian did was inspect what Liu Chong was wearing. The young man they'd met at the Death Gate earlier had been wearing a robe of maroon, but this one standing in the corridor was wearing a padded gray-blue robe, just like the one they'd met before entering the array. Without warning, Xuan Min stepped out of the gap where he was hiding. Before Scribe Liu could react, Xuan Min had already leaped in front of Liu Chong. He didn't even have the chance to scream before he was dragged toward a narrow door. Fortunately, the courtyard was quite small. The door was only a few steps away from the narrow wall, and Xuan Min reached it in a flash. Scribe Liu, who'd been frozen in front of the main hall, snapped back to his senses. His expression changed as he surged into action. But Xuan Min was faster. With a spin and a step, he was already behind the door. Bang! Xuan Min slammed the door closed. Without a second thought, Jiang Xining latched it shut. He then looked up at Liu Chong, who was still in a daze, and gasped in surprise. What are you two so shocked about? Shushian snapped. Why has the mole on his face changed places? Jiang Xining pointed at Liu Chong before realizing how rude that was and pulling back his hand. Wasn't it on the left before? Why did it move to the right? Didn't he realize that those words make no sense? Jiang Xining couldn't help shivering as he spoke. Shushian peeked out, caught sight of Jiang Xining's trembling, and decided he was done with this bookworm. What kind of ghost feared ghosts? Xuanmin's brows knitted, then relaxed. I understand. Are you kidding? You don't understand shit, cried Shushian. He was an impatient person by nature, yet now he was struck with the slow-witted Jiang Xining. Xuanmin was even worse, the type who wouldn't run even if the sky came crashing down. Shushian felt like he'd aged 10 years in an instant. Thoroughly out of patience, Shushian flipped out of the pouch to latch onto Liu Chong's pants. The blink of an eye, he'd disappeared under Liu Chong's padded robe. This sequence of sounds brought Liu Chong back to reality. Jiang Xining looked up and met Liu Chong's gaze. His eyes were large and in focus, devoid of life. The effect was dreadfully uncanny. Staring straight at them could make anyone wet their pants. Alarmed, Jiang Xining backed away. What he didn't realize was that ghosts were not so different from stray dogs. One might refrain from biting you while you are standing still, but it would attack the moment you moved. Nice. Read through channel. Well, that is a new thing for me. Your work is intelligible. I am also going to start my channel on books, ideas, theories soon, and my own analysis after my semester exams. Good! I wish you luck with that. You'll have to tell us when you start that and how it goes. Yeah. No, it's a super chill channel. We read books, we chat. I get where you're coming from. That is a good perspective if I was gonna go more in depth with it, but we're mostly here just to enjoy the story. So, no worries. Letting out a low growl, Liu Chong lunged at Jiang Xining. The bookworm's face twisted with fear. He started to scream, then forced it back down, unable to abandon the gentleman's decorum delineated within his books. So it was, ah! He wanted to run, but feared looking disgraceful. With one foot braced to jump while the other remained planted in place, he practically twisted himself into a knot. With a thump, the uncoordinated Jiang Xining finally lived up to expectations and fell to the ground in a heap. With no other options, he used his hands to scuttle backward. All right, so that's going to be a 2-pointer for Jiang Xining. So he's getting attacked by Liu Chong, and now he is fallen and lost his dignity. So we are up to 8 for Jiang Xining. Jiang Xining suffering. The Liu Chong conjured by the array had the same clumsiness as the real Liu Chong. Every move was slow and lumbering, yet full of terrifying strength. Jiang Xining watched as that creature sprang at him. He gasped and shrank back, squeezing his eyes shut. There was a muffled thud. Air gusted over Jiang Xining's face, and the tiles beneath his feet shook. Somehow, no cold fingers wrapped around his neck. Cautiously opening his eyes, Jiang Xining found Liu Chong sprawled on the ground, having inexplicably fallen face first. Oh my goodness. Even his scary ghost is endearing. He hadn't expected to stumble, and his slow reaction time meant he'd failed to catch himself with his hands landing solidly on his face. Jiang Xining was stunned for a few moments, then he scrambled to his feet and shook the dirt from his clothes, his eyes wide with disbelief. As he looked down, he saw Shushian sliding out from beneath Liu Chong's robe, holding a strip of cloth that suspiciously resembled a belt? Jiang Xining did a double take and realized why Liu Chong was on the ground. His pants had fallen to his ankle mid-lunge, tripping him. Liu Chong was already uncoordinated. With his pants sagging, he'd taken a nasty tumble. Because he'd hit his forehead, he lay flat and showed no signs of coming to. Being a ghost is bad, but being a clumsy ghost is worse, right? Shushian is taking no prisoners. Oh my goodness. Shushian tossed the belt at Jiang Xining's face. Don't just stand there. Tie his hands and feet together. Then he turned to Xuan Min with a look of disdain. Pick me up already. Come on now. I almost tore my arm getting rid of that thing. Pick me up? Jiang Xining could hardly believe his ears. What kind of paraplegic spends his days jumping and bouncing around? Then Jiang Xining suddenly realized he must have been a burden who'd brought this trouble on them, and he grew ashamed. Without agonizing over whether removing someone's belt went against his gentleman's decorum, he tied Liu Chong's left hand to his right foot. Sorry, Jiang Xining mumbled. Shushian scoffed, thinking Jiang Xining ridiculous. To help these assholes escape danger, he'd been forced to denigrate himself by removing someone's belt while dragging around 2 useless legs. Xuan Min should have fallen to his knees and picked him up with both hands before putting him back in his proper spot, but he was still standing there, completely oblivious. Useless bastard! Shushian glared up at Xuan Min, wanting to stare some guilt into him. Instead, he saw Xuan Min's left hand hovering over the coins at his waist, clearly about to unfasten them for some purpose. Could it be? Had Xuanmin been about to take matters into his own hands? Xuanmin had never thought of removing someone's belt to subdue them, nor had he foreseen such a development, so he had been taken aback until he recovered from the shock. Shushan watched intently until Xuanmin drew his fingers away from the coin string and picked up Shushan to return him to the pouch. Shushan immediately regretted his actions. Had he known Xuanmin would act, he wouldn't have rushed to remove Liu Chong's belt. Perhaps he would have gotten to see just what Xuanmin was made of. Feeling the loss of his chance, Shushan deflated, his paper body going limp and his head drooping like a hanged man's as he dangled from the pouch's opening. Xuanmin frowned, certain that Shushan was up to something. His fingers brushed over the paper head dangling from his pouch. When his fingers touched the material, the flimsy head rose just a little. The moment he let go, however, it flopped back down. After silently fiddling with the paper doll for a while, Xuanmin concluded that Shushan was probably suffering from some malady. Shaking his head, Xuanmin said to Jiang Xining, "Let's go." Right then, the narrow door rattled as Scribe Liu started ramming it from the other side. After 2 slams, the latch began to loosen. Bang! Bang! Jiang Xining shuddered hard at the noise and rushed after Xuanmin. They navigated the labyrinthine courtyard, taking several doors along the way and running into more than one group of people. The moment the people saw them, they broke from acting out their roles and lines. Ghostly energy enveloped them, and they started howling as they moved, some fast, some slow, as they trailed after them like kites. Jiang Xining turned a corner and fled through a door, his heart thumping as he counted their pursuers. Among them were maids and servants he didn't recognize, 3 different Scribe Lius, 2 Liu Chongs, and 2 old lady Lius gripping wooden canes. 2 unfamiliar, frail-looking maids tore apart an entire tree in their way while giving chase. That's intimidating. When you see something frail absolutely shred a tree, like that would be more terrifying than seeing like just a normal like healthy person do it, because that is like, oh okay. Like, wow. It was true that the tree was old, withered, and on the brink of death, but to tear it apart regardless, were their fingers as sharp as knives? See, even the author's like, that's kind of scary, right? Like, Jiang Xining shuddered in fear at the memory. He'd woken up alone in an empty room earlier. After going through 2 narrow doors, he'd run into Shushan and Xuanmin immediately. That had been a bout of incredible luck. And with their nails, oh yeah, shit's getting real at that point. Fortunately, Xuanmin remained quite composed. He walked swiftly, but there was no sign of panic or anxiety on his face. He seemed to know what he was doing as he moved through each door without a shred of hesitation. Jiang Xining didn't think he had a terrible sense of direction, but he still found himself thoroughly disoriented after all the twists and turns. Meanwhile, Xuanmin remained alert and focused. As if coming back to life, Shushan suddenly lifted his head and asked, "Bald donkey, where are we headed?" First to the death gate, then the life gate. Suddenly lifted his head and asked, "Bald donkey, where are we headed?" First to the death gate, then the life gate. If I'm not blind, this is the 3rd time we've been in this courtyard. Shushan's voice was skeptical. This is the obstruction gate, Xuanmin explained. So, look behind you. Shushan raised his drooping head and turned around, only to see a swath of white fabric. Are you mocking me? The only thing behind me is your raggedy monk's robe. Xuanmin didn't answer. And yes, I am going to add the donkey count. So we are at 10. Jiang Xining also gazed back at these words. He took a few quick steps before noticing something. What happened to the people behind us? Where did they go? I just heard them howling like hungry wolves a moment ago." Shushan finally understood what Xuanmin meant. "You were trying to shake them off?" Hmm. Scenery and obstruction, the two neutral gates among the eight, weren't without purpose. The obstruction gate was a place of concealment and thus the most suitable location to hide in and take refuge. Having passed through it 3 times, Xuan Min had successfully shaken off everyone who had been chasing them. He then spun around and exited the courtyard through a narrow door in the southwest before striding down a long corridor. "Isn't that the death gate we stumbled into earlier?" Shushian was puzzled when he saw Xuanmin open the narrow door in the corridor's corner and push Jiang Xining inside. "The death gate is known as the Path of Ghosts. It's auspicious for you." Startled by being pushed, Jiang Xining staggered through the door and into the courtyard. During their previous jaunt here, Shushian and Xuanmin had led the specters of Liu Chang and Old Lady Lu away. The place was completely empty and not so much as a shadow other than Jiang Xining. The moment Jiang Xining stepped into the courtyard, he vanished like a puff of smoke. "What? He left the array?" asked Shushian. Xuanmin nodded and took another series of twists and turns, making a beeline for the life gate. When they reached it, Shushian found the life gate's location even more familiar. "Isn't this Liu Chang's rundown little shack?" Shushian examined the gloomy little shed at the end of the stone path in disbelief that a location so ominous could be linked to the life gate. "I'd believe you more if you said it was the death gate." "It used to be so," said Schwanman. "However, the Liu residence got inverted, so the death gate became the life gate." "What do you mean?" Shushian said with a frown. He recalled what Jiang Xining said earlier about the mole on Liu Chang's cheek changing positions. It had moved to the right from its original position on the left. A thought flashed through his mind. Then, a mirror? Xuanmin glanced at Shushian's paper head. He might have been a troublemaker, but he wasn't Southwest House, the initiation gate at the main house in the northwest, and the life gate at the northeast. That was right. Xuanmin had asked Scribe Liu about that when they were standing at the entrance of Liu Chang's room. The northwest house was Scribe Liu's, while the northeast house was where his youngest son, Liu Jin, lived. Among the 8 gates, the initiation gate came first, symbolizing the establishment of a successful career. Scribe Liu aspired to rise in the ranks, so he naturally placed himself at the initiation gate. The life gate symbolized vitality and reproduction. Placing his young son there ensured his safety and smooth sailing through life. This way, Scribe Liu could rest assured about his successor. Suddenly, Shushian understood why Scribe Liu had used the precept, drawing the river to the sea. Poor Liu Chang, slow-witted and foolish, was completely ignorant of the world. He'd lived for 20-odd years, but folding palm-sized paper ingots was probably the one thing he was good at. Using this meager skill of his, he heaped his room full of filial sincerity. In his desire to be impartial, he'd even divided them into groups and labeled them. Gold and silver, be at peace today. Back when Scribe Liu had been a child, had Old Lady Liu also burned ingots with him and said those words to him? But even if she had, he'd probably forgotten them all, or he would not have had the heart to cast aside his disabled son the way one might an old shoe. Drawing the river to the sea. Liu Chang was the river. The Liu family was the sea. However, Scribe Liu probably didn't realize the precision a feng shui layout required. A single change could reverse yin and yang, turning misfortunes into blessings and blessings into misfortunes. The bronze mirror that Old Lady Liu and Liu Chang had buried beneath the ancient tree. Change misfortune into blessing, may they all rest in peace. It had become that variable. Thus, the 8 gates had inverted, and the death gate became the life gate. As they drew closer to that gloomy shack, the narrow door leading to the main house creaked open. By this point, Shushian was already numb to all these unexpected noises. Surely it isn't another Liu Chong, he thought. He leaned over Xuanmin's waist for a glimpse, only to see that, sure enough, it was Liu Chong again. There's no end to this. Shushian's temper flared. He raised his arms, ready to escape the pouch, but stopped himself halfway. Glancing sideways at the string of copper coins hanging from Xuanmin's waist, Shushian realized this was his chance. He bit his tongue before looping his hand around the string of coins. Pushing them into Xuanmin's hands, Shushian looked up at him. What are you waiting for? Xuanmin pressed Shushian back down with a finger. No rush. His mole is on the left cheek. Shushian was so angry he could barely breathe. He hung his head like an overcooked noodle against the pouch's opening once more. This instance of Liu Chong was as Xuanmin said. His mole was on his left cheek, and his robe was the grayish-blue one they'd seen that morning. From head to toe, there was no abnormalities present. This was the real deal. When Liu Chong came through the narrow door, his expression was 3 parts confused and 7 parts frustrated. He stepped over the threshold while sneaking glances behind him, lumbering forward 2 steps before catching sight of Xuanmin. He froze for a moment, then his face fell, his eyebrows pinching into a neat frown. I just saw Grandma. As he spoke, he pointed outside the narrow door. Right there. Grandma? Wasn't that old lady Liu? They had just shaken off their pursuers only now. Surely this fool hadn't brought them more. Shushian, who had been dangling in resignation, suddenly snapped back up and looked Liu Chong. Oh, I think they missed a word and looked at Liu Chong. Where is she? I chased after her. She left. Liu Chong's face was heavy with sorrow, his tone anxious. Poor baby. Oh, man. He didn't even realize that the question hadn't come from Xuanmin. She didn't look at me. I couldn't find her. No matter how I try, I can't. He wrung his hands, miserable and dejected. He stared longingly out the narrow door. After a long while, he spoke again. I want to talk to Grandma. Shushian pondered what Scribe Liu and his friends had said earlier. Old Lady Liu must have passed away. According to the rumors, her death was a result of malpractice by Jiang Xining's parents. After Old Lady Liu's death, the Jiang family clinic had caught fire and burned down. Jiang Xining died 3 years ago, so Old Lady Liu must have been dead for at least 3 years as well. Liu Chong had a one-track mind. If he expressed a desire for something, it must be something he yearned for day and night. For him, the past 3 years had been excruciatingly long and lonely. He's just making me sad. Like, this poor boy. Let's go. Xuanmin waved at him, then turned and headed toward Liu Chong's ramshackle residence without waiting. Perhaps Xuanmin's high monk aura was too intimidating, or maybe it was the way he simply turned and left. Either way, Liu Chong rushed after him without thinking. I want to look for Grandma, Liu Chong stammered as he stumbled to catch up with Xuanmin. Even Shushian couldn't resist cajoling him first. Hey now, what's the rush? Let's get back to the house first. Liu Chong fiddled for a while before muttering, I'm still worried. Deal with it. Shushian was blunt this time. Liu Chong stared at Xuanmin's icy profile for a moment, looking a little scared. He endured a couple of steps, then mustered the courage to ask, Why do you always speak with your mouth closed? Oh, I mean, deep down, don't we all just want to see our grandmas? I mean, or our loved ones that have passed. Yeah. Xuanmin just silently stared at Liu Chong. It's ventriloquism, Shushian lied with a straight face. Basically, I can speak from my stomach. Liu Chong's eyes slowly swiveled over, his gaze falling on Xuanmin's abdomen. He had nothing to add, apparently. In the span of their short conversation, they'd arrived at the building's entrance. As long as they passed through its door, they'd be able to leave the array. Xuanmin showed no hesitation. He raised his foot decisively, then grabbed the unsettled Liu Chong. Liu Chong stumbled forward, and one of his feet landed over the threshold. Just as his other foot was about to cross, a knocking sound drifted over. The sound of something striking the courtyard tiles. Huh? This was probably the fastest Liu Chong had ever reacted in his life. He instantly froze and cried out, "Grandma!" Tugging back his half-raised foot, he turned around and dashed back out the door. It was too easy. It couldn't be that easy. Hey, wait! Shu Xian called after him. Xuanmin lifted an arm ready to haul Liu Chong back, but when he did so, a muffled drone echoed in Shu Xian's head. His vision darkened, and the world seemed to spin. When Shu Xian came back to his senses, the scene before him had completely changed. They were standing by the door of Liu Chong's shack with Jiang Xining's pale face in front of them, but Liu Chong had vanished. It was clear that they'd escaped the array, and at the last moment before their escape, Liu Chong had pulled away, thus remaining trapped inside. Right? Leave it to a Danmei novel to make me tear up thinking about both my grandmas who have passed. I mean, Danmeis do hit you in the feels. Where those feels are, like, it varies. But yeah, so that is where we're going to leave it for this week. But we will be back with part 3 on Tuesday. And now you've got me thinking about it. It's hard when people die, and it is more than understandable to think about them and be sad, but also hopefully remember the good times and not just be sad that they're not there anymore. Because it's okay, Annika. Because they were important in our life, and they'd want us not just to be sad. But yeah, definitely. All right. And on that note, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's reading. It was definitely interesting. I cannot wait to see what happens next because that was kind of a perfect place to end it for now. But yeah, have a good night and a great weekend to you as well, Esper Lady. And I hope you have some happy feels in a bit, Truffle. And good night, Chichi Kiki. Good night, Truffle. And thank you, Annika. Have a great weekend as well. And goodbye as well, Gibran Amin. Thank you for your comments tonight. I will definitely think on it, but I think it'll probably just remain kind of chill like it is. But yes. To everyone who watched later, I hope you enjoyed as well. I'm having a lot of fun with this story, and I hope you are too. See you next time. Bye-bye.